Bricks and Minifigs is your one-stop shop for all things LEGO. Hit the link below to find a store near you.
My name's Zane Houston. I'm a teacher from Denver. So I got some mocks here at Brick World. This is my big one for the year. This is a Dr. Robotnik mech. Obviously from the Sonic universe. The Sega Genesis was my first console, and my sister and I played a lot as kids. So when the Sonic sets came out last summer, it was that inspiration to build just a giant Robotnik mech in my own style. So this project took me about 7 months on and off, tweaking the structure and the base, and just really having fun with some of the more cleaner shapes here, but then also getting like kind of that gritty 16-bit texture in the base. So yeah, it was fun to work with.
Yeah, I think the scale of this thing just makes it so much fun, especially when you've got the Sonic minifig down here and you sort of look up from his perspective.
Right.
So how did you kind of play around with the posability of the whole scene?
Yeah, I wanted it to look like a boss battle, so I wanted the area in between to be pretty flat and kind of like what you'd expect from like a classic video game. And yeah, I wanted that depth. I didn't want it to be like too big and open, so it was just about getting the right spacing so it wasn't so boring. But you also get the sense that Robotnik is kind of chasing Sonic down, and he has that kind of apprehensive pose, not as confident as he normally is. So, yeah.
Now, with Robotnik here itself, what are some of the kind of main architectural elements that sort of like keep this thing together structurally? How does this thing hold together?
Sure. Well, so the legs, I mean, it was a big challenge. I didn't want them all 90 degrees to each other. It's usually easier with Lego because, you know, it's mostly rectangular bricks. But so I was watching some like 3D animation videos on how to like animate spiders crawling and try and mimic that. So it's actually more of a structural tripod. This leg right here is like kind of being held up by the mech. And then the base it's there for the aesthetics, but it's also, the legs kind of continue into the base, so it's helping hold that. And then where those three structural legs meet up is just like a rat's nest of Technic pieces keeping it all together.
And so I think something that makes this look so cool is how clean it is. There's very few studs showing on this whole build. So what were some of the pieces that you found kind of worked well for that as you got those shapes together, and did that include some sideways building and that kind of thing? Yeah,
and this is kind of the style that I like to build in, using the sides of bricks as the surface as opposed to like tiles and having studs exposed. So there definitely are some tiles in here, but a lot of these red parts, you're looking at the side of the brick. So like this section, the stud direction is actually going down. And so you're not going to see any studs because they're all just hidden by the bricks on top. So yeah, just kind of continue that all throughout to get that like big metal plate look.
Now, is there movability here and playability in kind of the arms?
I mean, these will rotate, but otherwise it's a static pose. Something like this big and heavy, like you definitely could make it posable, but as far as getting it here and not having it collapse, I just built it so that this is like the only pose it can really hold. So.
No, that makes sense. Now, the face and kind of the cockpit section is also fantastic here. So what is that like structurally? Because it looks like you got elements shooting off in a lot of different directions.
Yeah, well, the whole thing, actually the very first thing I built were the glasses, because I knew I wanted that technique for the sheen, and that kind of set the scale for the mustache and then the rest of the build. And so those were all kind of built separately and then just stuck together, whatever the positioning looked good. And so yeah, it's all being held on by different brackets and snot bricks, and then it's just attached by a few Technic lift arms behind to get attached to the spine in the back.
Are these the old Rock Raiders drill chrome pieces down there?
They are. I built a Rock Raiders mech last year, and they were like $6 a piece, so I had to reuse them, get my money's worth. Yeah.
When pieces are that expensive, they're showing up in every build.
Yes, yeah, I'll probably use them next year. So, yeah.
No, I love that. It looks fantastic. Now, you mentioned the landscaping here as well, kind of that video game feel. Super parts intensive on the water here. Is that all a bunch of plates in there?
Yeah, it's all plates. I had started on like the grass trimming, and once I really liked that effect, so I was like, I'll just do this with the water. And yeah, that was like first try, and I really liked how it came out, and so I left it. So I was really happy with that.
These trees are also very unique. What are some of the pieces you used in there? Because it's a very different type of tree design.
Yeah, I actually had to message my friends because I didn't know what this piece was. I thought it was a slope, and I couldn't find it on Bricklink. I'm like, oh, that's a windscreen. I was looking for the opaque one. But yes, these are all lime windscreens that I think have been used as vehicle mudguards. But I wanted to capture that like 16-bit tree from the original video game. So yeah.
Do you have any idea how many pieces are in this build here?
I don't. My best estimate, so these, going back to these vertical plates in the grass, there's about 2,215 plates just in the trim. So if you can extrapolate from there, yeah, it's a lot of parts. So
Yeah. Well, this is spectacular, but you've got several more builds you brought to Brick World as well that I wanted to make sure we talked about.
Sure.
So we can move on down the line here to the next one.
Yeah.
And what do we have happening here? Because there's some very interesting shapes in this build.
Yeah, so I like the clean builds, which we'll see here, but this is like the exact opposite. This is just very gritty, wedge plates, studs out. This is a Haunter from Pokemon. I'm a big Pokemon fan. And yeah, I just wanted to, Haunter's my favorite Pokemon, and I wanted to build like this dynamic style, just to pay tribute to him. And so, yeah, on the inside, a lot of ball joints, clips and bars. A lot of these chunks are being held on by a single stud. So if someone bumps the table, I got to make some repairs, and that's just how it goes. So
Yeah. And then on the right side, you've of course got kind of the subtle mixes like the purple and black and kind of the different layers going on there.
yeah. So I wanted it, like, using that attack. That's the Shadow Ball attack, and it's kind of, the animation is really hard to build in Lego. So I wanted to look like little lightning bolts going around this dark ball. And so that was the technique I went with. So
Yeah. And with using these types of colors here, was it difficult to find some of those elements in the right color? Because that's not a super common one.
Right, and actually, I mean, to be true to the Pokemon, I should have used dark purple, but these parts I could find for a lot cheaper, and I thought magenta might stand out. So it's about this 4x4 round plate I got for like a penny each. So I bought 400 of them. If I use them, great. If not, whatever. So yeah, there's certain parts that are easy to get, and then others are harder to find. So it's just about using the parts that are available to you and just making it work for whatever it is.
Yeah. This next build down goes in another very different direction with all of these trans clear elements.
Yeah, so this is a Mewtwo, another Pokemon, obviously different scale. This is kind of inspired by the opening scene in the first Pokemon movie where it breaks out of the stasis cell. And so I just wanted a lot of debris and destruction. And it does move. I'm going to try and turn it on real quick. After 2 days of public viewing, the friction has kind of caught up with me, so we're going to see if it runs.
Movement can be very tricky with Lego builds, especially when you run it for lots of hours during a show.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert with it yet, so here we go. Here goes nothing. And so I wanted that swirling debris around him, and he's, a psychic Pokemon, so he's just floating there and hovering in midair, so.
Yeah. And how did you get that kind of core bottom part built out with some of those gears and kind of incorporating all those, even like the orange elements down there?
Yeah, so the base, that's where all pieces are falling off. That's all right, I can fix it. We got a worm gear, and it's turning one of the big Technic turntables. And so that acts as a planetary gear, so the main debris is going the opposite direction as the broken glass. And then we just have gears on the outside spinning these parts on the edge. So
yeah. And then are those kind of big clear Technic beams there that kind of hold all those clear elements in?
Yeah, got the pick a brick wall, glass doors, and just attached them whichever way I could. So.
Yeah. It creates a really neat effect, especially when you turn it on here. And then how about the character itself? Do you enjoy building these types of characters?
It's not my typical style, so it was actually kind of frustrating because with the bigger things, I have freedom to kind of hide the structure underneath, where this one, it's like the structure is the exterior. And so you have to know how to, just make it look good and make it actually stay together. And the color, this lavender, is not a very common Lego color, so you'll see these light gray connections at all the joints, 'cause that's what's available. So working with that color, it's same thing with Haunter. You got to do the best with what you got. And so yeah, there's definitely some there's not even cheese slopes in this color, so you have to just figure it out.
You're not making it easy on yourself with these character choices
right.
here.
I guess I just like that challenge. I don't know. Yeah.
No, that's super cool. I'm glad it's still running pretty decently well for you there.
Yeah.
So then coming down to the next build, going in, again, a very different direction.
Yeah, so this is inspired by the Ice Planet universe. I actually built this back in August. It looked a little bit different, and then when the collectible minifigure came out with the penguin, I was like, well, I gotta tweak it a little bit and get him in the cockpit. So yeah, I got the big quarter domes from 1995. And I thought they looked cool as giant claws. So yeah, it's just a big stomping mech that's supposed to carve through the ice. and I got the penguin in the cockpit there.
So for people who aren't familiar, Ice Planet was what, a 90s era kind of Lego space theme?
Yeah, and they had a lot of like vehicles and it's really cool base and like rockets and things like that. They didn't really have any mechs back then, so this is kind of like, my contribution to that theme.
Yeah. And using those giant quarter dome elements in a mech like this, what is kind of structurally kind of keeping that on? Is that very precarious there at all?
It is. They're really, it's a weird piece to work with. So the quarter dome is connected here, and then the dome itself is actually holding the rest of the white part on top. So like this white is not connected to itself because of that weird 45 or I guess 135 degree angle.
Mm-hmm. No, I love the way you've posed this though, and especially the little penguin inside there is super fun.
Yeah, just a fun build. Yeah, not taking it too seriously. So.
Then the final build we have in your lineup here uses some just really unique shaping. So what's the story behind this one?
Yeah, so I wanted to build an underwater submarine mech for a long time. I started with some like sketches on the back of an envelope. It was more crab-like at first, and then eventually incorporated like a shark fin and a tail and the anglerfish parts, and so just an amalgamation of animals. And so when I was thinking about it, I wanted it on like a dark blue base, and I was inspired by kind of like typical euhedral crystal clusters, and I was trying a bunch of wacky angles and it was not working at all. And so I decided to go with this, which is, it's really all 90 degrees, which should be easy with Lego. But then like when I tilted it, like there's some complications. But this whole thing, I'm gonna take this apart real quick. It's all made from these like, there's 120 of these and they're all labeled. This is 2J. And so they all fit together, and to save on parts, because I don't have unlimited dark blue, any overlapping cubes, I just didn't even fill with bricks.
Yeah.
And so they all just slide together and make this effect. So.
Yeah. I mean, it works really well, especially the way that you've incorporated this kind of vein running through here where you get kind of a lot more detailed, smaller pieces.
Yeah, and so I originally wanted like a lava river, and now it's more of like maybe some toxic spill. It's, however people want to interpret it, and I'm fine with that. So, but yeah, it was fun to play with these parts, but keeping like that cubic structure like still behind it. So.
How many times do people come up and ask if this is Minecraft?
There was a few Minecrafts. A lot of people, this was in the sea vessel category. I'm like, how's this a sea vessel? I'm like, well, it swims. I don't know. So yeah, and everyone's seeing it in a different way, which I think is actually really cool. So.
And for the vessel itself, what are some of the main elements there? You've got those sort of legs going on, and again, kind of a super smooth look like we saw with the Sonic build earlier.
Right. Yeah. So this is my style. This is that chunky mechanical look. I want it to look like there's little springs in the legs and, the fin, and just some like random little greebles that make it look mechanical, even though they don't technically have a function. It doesn't move or anything, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. And for bringing out some of these larger builds to a show like Brickworld Chicago, how do you transport some of these builds?
Yeah, so the Robotnik base, that's 3 big chunks. And this one, because each cube breaks off separately, I wrapped each one in bubble wrap, and it is kind of a giant packing peanut. So then I just wedge those all over the place and kind of keep everything together. But they all, like this one, each leg comes off and it really just gets parted out, wrapped in bubble wrap, and then you just cross your fingers and hope it survives the 15-hour car ride. So.
There you go. I love the variety of builds you've brought out here. For people who want to see more of your work, do you post your builds online anywhere?
Yes, I am on Instagram, Zane Builds. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm also on Flickr if people are around on Flickr, but it's a bit older. But yeah, mostly Instagram. And most of these are not actually on Instagram yet, so the rest of the summer I'll be working on taking photographs and editing those. So.
Yeah. Awesome work. Thank you so much for bringing all these out to the show, and thanks for taking us through each of them. I appreciate
it. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.